Welcome to the Logosphere. I'm Chris Stites here, as always, with JD Roof.
Hello.
And
Good evening.
we are happy to have back our first guest, Cal Holczler. Last time we spoke with Cal, he shared his story about where he grew up in a religious cult-like environment, which you left for various reasons, and all the trials and tribulations which took place after that, and you were in a unique place in your life where you had made your way back to those roots.
Right.
And now you're back here in California. So why don't you fill us in a little bit on what's been going on and what the result of that whole experiment was?
Well, it's great to be back here.
Yeah.
Nice seeing you guys. And it's been very interesting. I've been thinking about it in the context of an analogy of, I've been prefacing to people when I have a conversation. I'm like, okay, sorry for the visual, but I just decided to go back into the womb for 9 months and rebirth myself. And the last year, we had a conversation, over 6 months ago? Yeah. It's been almost a year since I've been back at my parents', which I never thought as an adult I'll do again. But as I mentioned last time, it's been almost 25 years since I've actually spent time there, getting to know my parents, getting to know my nieces and nephews and family. And from that regard, it's been beyond amazing. Like, so many tender moments with my parents. Me kind of accepting my father to the best of my ability of how he is and learning the ways that he shows me love, which is, not necessarily me sitting down with man to man having a conversation in depth. I find myself often even getting into things and halfway through it or within a few seconds, he kind of, English isn't his first language. So we have conversation and he's like, I'm not really sure what that word means. I'm like, this is going to be frustrating. So there's certainly a language barrier, but just my mother constantly expressing her gratitude for having me back in their lives. And it's been a beautiful year. But towards the end, I kind of, I reconnected that. I'm sure there's a longer conversation to dive into, which is a conversation about how much my trauma growing up impacted my ability to love and to be loved in romantic relationships. Today, it's a fucking interesting conversation. Are we allowed to curse?
Yeah. Oh, no, you can
great.
curse. Maybe we could frame it too, because if somebody hasn't listened to our first interview, are your parents still part of that Hasidic?
Let's make him watch it first.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, are they still part of this Hasidic culture? Is it very hardcore? Like,
I tell people,
were you welcome back to live at their house, or?
I tell people I grew up an hour north of Manhattan in 18th century era.
Right. And you explained that before.
And it's still like that
it's
there.
Still like that.
They haven't budged at all.
They've integrated in the sense like they have phones. They don't have smartphones. You have to have like permission from the rabbi if you are going to use a computer or a smartphone. It's very interesting culture. Last time when I was talking about it, I was talking about like how there's so many negatives and positives and different ways of looking how they live their lives. I wouldn't jump to the first conclusion that a lot of people have of like, oh, they must be all miserable and they're all really repressed. I wouldn't put it that way. But certainly not a lifestyle that, to put it differently, I've always been really amused and I remember having the thought, like, God must have such a sense of humor that he put me into that particular community. It's like, since I was a kid, I would like look out in the world and being like, what? You want me to do what? You want me to just how? Do you want me to be, you want me to conform with everyone around me? Why? Like, why can't I just have my own unique individual self-expression? But I'd left more than 25 years ago, and left as a long discussion. Like, did I leave? Was I taken out? By the community I was taken out by the community, placed with a family in Brooklyn, New York, which was kind of unheard of growing up in that culture.
Were you exiled in a way, or were you sent out? What was the purpose of your removal?
I think it was multiple different things. It was convenient for them to have me not be there, to not really influence other kids negatively and maybe encourage them to speak about the sexual abuse that they were experiencing or question why they lived the life that they live. And I remember them putting it in the context of, oh, if we send him away, he'll be in a more open environment, a more nurturing environment, a place where he can be his wild self of sorts. But I'm like, that certainly didn't happen. It was just...
You didn't find yourself in more open environments?
I found myself in very open environments, but it wasn't like a nurturing environment where I went for like healing and self-love. It was just, oh, he's not here anymore. And that was like my introduction to the world.
I guess you said you, by your own admission, were traumatized by your upbringing.
Yeah.
And part of you going back, you were saying that you wondered if that trauma that you experienced colored the relationships you've been in.
Correct.
And now you've returned, hopefully in some effort to confront your origin and to maybe close the loop and to resolve some of this trauma. And I guess the big question, is, were you able to do that? Can anyone do that? How does someone do that? What is doing that?
If
entail?
You hear me breathe really deeply, these are intense fucking loops of conversations. We ended the last interview saying, okay, so you've had this really wild, promiscuous, alternative life that you've lived sexually, romantically, socially. And now you're back in 18th century Europe surrounded by Orthodox Jews. So how do you go from like going to sex parties, being involved with companies that are on the fringe, to say the least, to now being surrounded by a completely different culture? And we ended the conversation of like, well, with regards to a partner, I would like to find this like sacred
whore.
Sacred whore.
Which we almost called the conversation.
One that embodies it almost made it into the title.
It did. It did. Very close.
I would say if I have to make a statement, it's like, Cal, what's one thing you want with regards to relationships? I'm happy to admit and to report to myself, in the first time in my adult life, I don't know, maybe in 20 years, maybe a bit less, I actually want to get married, have a wife and kids, and be in a monogamous relationship.
Wow.
Which is a very strange...
There's got to be some people out there pinching themselves.
You were almost there.
I was almost
there. You were almost there,
but
you were holding on to some stuff.
I was like, okay, I want a committed context, but I wouldn't know. I don't know if I would want that model. And I have to say, first of all, this might be odd to admit. Well, I just turned 40. I've never been in a monogamous relationship. And I've had many, many, many relationships, partners, different types of dynamics. It's starting to make sense. And this all comes full circle with allowing myself to be loved by my parents did something to my heart. I don't really understand its impact yet. But to have this visceral experience of something viscerally, physiologically being filled up that just wasn't there prior. So I have to speak to Jordan Peterson or to some psychologist.
He was in my head there.
Right? So I don't really know what happened psychologically, but I went back into the place where love should have happened properly, that didn't as a kid, and there was like no deflection. I would just let my mother express how grateful she is, how happy she is that I'm back in their lives, listen to my siblings, be active in my family. So it's not like that this chapter ends, but I now feel like there's something in my foundation that I'm looking, it's like, would I want to have a partner that I can have all the experiences that I've had, or would I want to have a partner that there's so much devotion, care, attention towards each other and building a particular context that is loving, that is honest, that is vibrant, but like in a a very deliberate monogamous context. That's one thing, but I have to say, it's like, when it comes to marriage, I'm actually yearning for it. It's not just an idea. It's a bizarre sensation to have of wanting to go back to. We were talking a lot about it. It's like Jordan Peterson's Conversations kept going back into my head, and I kept listening to it again and again in different ways. It's like, if I want to raise children, what kind of environment would I want to bring them up in?
But it sounds like it's, on one hand, intellectual, but
Right.
the yearning is something that's different from that. This isn't just a conclusion that you've come to after a lot of sound reasoning.
Right, no.
It's something that is maybe involuntary, right?
Now I'm just trying to figure out. So today was, in the Jewish culture, there's this like a 40-day challenge that people do. And it's a 40-day of celibacy, and then particular readings that we do that has its mystical traditions, etc. So I've actually been celibate since, how long has it been? It's been a couple months. It's been like 5-6 months. Longer than I've ever. I don't know why we're talking about celibacy on a podcast, but
Well, no,
here we are.
I mean, I was celibate for my first 2 years.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So I've had a lot of different. For a time, I deleted all social media from my phone to not like have my attention being scattered everywhere, and then removed dating apps, and then did completely no stimulation and no distraction, and then different tantric practices. It took its own little. And now I feel like, okay, you went on a diet, or you've learned a really healthy routine, a workout routine, and you've accomplished the days that you've committed yourself. What am I going to do now? Start eating a bunch of fucking Cheetos and lose everything that I just gained? Or do I now go, how about you continue doing that, and I'll figure out what else you're going to incorporate, or where can you acclimate but keep the progress that you've made? So with relationships, I feel like I'm at the same point where, and it's a tall fucking order. So I feel like I've built this foundation where I now go, okay, if I am going to be sexual with somebody, could I find somebody to be sexual with where it's not a game of dominance, unless if agreed upon from a nurturing standpoint, but it's not like the hungry ghost kind of, and it's not manipulative, and it's not dishonest, and it's not conniving, and it's not boredom, and it's not just entertainment, where there's actually an environment of care and a desire to see each other, and a desire and a sacredness to it, which is going to be very interesting to like be in the conversation, be like, yeah, I would want to be playful, but like I want to dance salsa, but I want to find somebody who actually likes salsa and knows salsa.
Now, have you had experiences like that before?
A handful.
You must have had at least pieces of them, otherwise you wouldn't be able to
I have a reference point
something.
to it. But a handful from dozens and dozens and dozens of experiences. So I think that's one answer to the question, like what I got from going back to my community. Well, religious-wise, it rekindled many things. I've integrated a lot more practices, and I'm a lot more embedded in the Jewish world, and that's a long conversation.
Are your parents stoked that you're more on board?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that part of a tension between you, that you weren't on the same page?
I think
religiously, and now that you are more, that there's.
I was really gifted with being in a situation where my mother and father, a little bit more my mother, the work to accept me unconditionally. It wasn't like, we'll love you if you did this. So them having done the work to meet me wherever I am, and me being at a place where I intentionally wanted to come back, I'm very fortunate. There's a lot of kids that grow up in that kind of environment. Once they reject that way of life or don't fall into the specific box, will forever be rejected and not be accepted and not be welcomed back. That wasn't the case for me. But I always reminded people that I didn't really come back to that community. I came back to my family to reconnect with my family. They happen to be in that culture, and I just learned to have lots of different moments where I can like smile at people and meet with people and walk around that town, and then notice, oh, I don't have this hatred or indifference that is like I gotta stick it to you. It's just like I was living my life, and I knew I was there for a particular period of time to reconnect with my family, and now I'm onto this next really interesting journey, trying to figure out where can I be Jewish, single, thriving, sober, on purpose with all the insanity happening in the world, and et cetera, et cetera.
Did you ever confront your family on the ways that they hurt you, or no?
I did. There was a documentary that was done when I was running my nonprofit many years ago. And it wasn't so much confronting. Well, it kind of was. It was we were recording the town and some interviews that I was having with people. And we sat down with my parents asking, well, the abuse didn't happen by them. It happened in the community. It's so interesting.
But I guess by them being part of the community,
right,
they would be complicit in it, probably to some degree. Did they ever take responsibility for that or not? You don't have to answer that. It's just a question that comes to mind.
The reason why it's a very controversial question and answer. I'll put it this way. So I won't make a value judgment. I will just give you like three perspectives. One, confront where there's evil no matter what. Nothing justifies innocent people being hurt.
Is that a tenet that they live by?
No. I'm just saying, assume that's something I try on, you try on. We just...
Yeah, the way you said it, I thought it might have been a principle that was...
Well, Judaism has many principles. Like hurting people isn't included in... Of course it's included not to hurt people. Yeah. But I'm saying like from...
But then no matter what... Sorry to interrupt you. Maybe I'm throwing you off the beam, but I'm thinking at the same time. But I can understand why someone who's part of a community like that would be incentivized to brush things under the rug.
So I'm about to say that happens often.
So much relies on it.
That happens often.
You could really be sacrificing so much good that comes to so many people because of, you know.
And that still happens. What I was about to say, that what my personal journey, and that potentially could change tomorrow. But up to this point, I had to kind of look at the community, look at all the players on the field, and with my maturity kind of go, I got shit to focus on as far as my own life is concerned, as far as my kids' lives are concerned, as far as me putting myself together. To go into the community and say, because I grew up here, I am responsible to change every fucking thing that is unjust in this community is not reasonable.
And that was an attitude you had at some point.
I had for a very long time.
So part of your own part would maybe be maturing.
I was like, I can't live with, like, I was trying to run this nonprofit. I was trying to go back, stop childhood sexual abuse. If you know of anybody that was abused by anybody, it's my job to stand up. I think that was my 20s of idealistic...
Self-righteous, savior complex.
Like, I know
moral
the methods.
Superiority.
I have the connections. I have the will. I have the means to bring in therapists and fire all the teachers and then change its morality.
Yeah, reform.
Yeah, and I was psychotic about that.
Mm-hmm. And your parents probably knew that.
For how long? For how long did that run?
Most of my 20s.
Wow.
That was like societal, but now I go in and I'm like, I know there's corruption in that community. And I have to focus on paying off my own debt. Mm-hmm. Physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually, spiritually. So there's a fine line between, to be very cliche about the one we really love, but make my own bed.
Yeah.
And then beautifying my own room. And then thinking about my family, which is, I went backwards for a very long time. I fixed myself for a while, and then came me dealing with my family, like getting to know my kids, well, one that I'm currently building a relationship with, the other, hopefully, God willing, soon. And then my mother, my father, my siblings, my sisters, as we were sharing early, like to talk to a sister that was so close to my age and learn how it affected her and how it impacted her, me leaving a very small knit family and community. And then heal that and build a relationship with her and her husband and her kids and just be a part of their lives and be there for them, be there for my younger brother, and etc. So I'm responsible to change everyone's lives went away. So this is why I started with, do I know there's wrong that is happening there? Yes. Is it my responsibility to change it? I don't know. Not today. Like right now, there's other things to be more responsible about. So I think being an adult is being able to look at a situation and kind of go, there's some fucked up things here. And I'm not going to change world hunger and homelessness, but if I have some extra food, what can I do to do the best that I can with regards to making the world a better place? So going back there, it was something that came up a lot. Like I would think about abuse that is happening or conversations that I want to have with particular people. And I'm like, not my job. Mm-hmm. Not today.
So you just focused on the family?
I focused on my family, focused on my career, focused on... I spent a lot of time reading books, like literally piles of books were just piling up.
What kind of books?
A lot of political books.
Uh-oh.
The path we're not going down. About China, Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, the famine coming sadly soon, the financial collapse, the World Economic Forum.
The Great Reset.
I heard that recently, that
the Great Awakening.
The war, pandemic, and famine always happen together.
So with regards to that conversation, we actually, so you all know, we agreed not to talk too much about it because I'm at a point where I literally was spending a few hours every day reading articles, listening to podcasts of new information, like from, listen to Joe Rogan to Aubrey Marcus to Jordan Peterson stuff to Daily Wire, and all of a sudden you're like, I can spend 12 hours a day. I've never done that.
Yeah.
Learning about what's happening in space, learning what's happening to the environment, learning what's happening to geopolitical issues. And I did the same thing recently with the same logic with regards, is it my job to stop every pedophile in the world? To kind of go, what can I do financially in this particular economy that will have me be ahead in a couple of years? So that's a longer conversation. I don't want to speak publicly about it yet because it's a new endeavor, but that's my thinking with regards to
how do you... quick Gandalf reference, keep your secrets.
What's that?
Gandalf reference. Keep your secrets.
Am I getting that right?
I don't know. Yeah. I can't sign off on it until we do a little research. Okay. But yeah.
As in, it's like I'm aware of a lot what's happening, and I want to still. Here's something that I keep hearing time and time again from a lot of successful people today. Times like these, some people really, really win.
Huge opportunity. Huge opportunity.
So I'm trying to stay focused on what is the opportunity and how do I focus on physical, emotional, mental, financial, that I can still be responsible to my kids and I can still be responsible for my actual contribution to the world. And I have to, at the end of the day, I have to come to the conclusion that if I have it's like, there's a million ways of saying this, but I don't know where thoughts live. Do you? I don't know where they originate. I don't know who pumps my heart or what pumps my heart. I know science can be like, here's the mechanism that it happens. What's its origin? We don't know. That's not the conversation. We're spinning in space. Like, there's so much that we have no idea what's actually happening. So when I look at geopolitical insanity or happenings, I just end with the conclusion of like, yes, if I was zooming into my cells on a molecular level, I would see a lot of death all the time. And I would see a lot of crazy shit happening, like things are popping into existence and out of existence. What if, like, when we look out to space, we're seeing what's happening in our bodies?
I think about that a lot, the question of how much to focus on death, for instance.
Meaning there's crazy shit happening, but there's death all the time. So maybe what the metamorphosis that is happening to the world...
Certainly to ignore death is probably not the right path.
Of course not.
But then there's so much tragedy out there in the world that could be focused on that can just be stifling. And that, of course, isn't the right path either.
That's what Jordan Peterson is one of the things he always talks about. We don't really know the implications of what technology is going to, what kind of impact it's going to have on our psyche. Because we never, ever, in the history of humanity, we're at a place where we can take in so much information at the same time.
We're told, the output is way overloading the input.
We're at a place where, like, we don't know what it's going to do to us. So if you're sitting back and you're reading about 500 catastrophic things that happen today, are you really at a place where you can take positive action to impact yourself and the world?
Yeah, that's very Heidegger, really. He talks about just man coming to a stop, basically, and industry taking over. And he's talking about technology.
I think they have
a long time ago.
They have, there's good motivation for them to confuse us to shit.
Right.
With so much information that you can't actually follow. So I'm personally taking responsibility for that. So that doesn't happen to me. Like, what is the narrative beyond the narrative? What are the practices that I need to do on a daily basis to stay sane?
So you're back on social media?
I'm back on social media.
What platforms? Twitter?
No.
Oh, Twitter's successful.
I am on Twitter.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. I reactivated when Elon Musk was almost going to buy it.
Whatever happened to that?
Isn't he currently in court?
I think it was a big troll, honestly.
Yeah.
Looking back at like everything that happened, I think
a troll that can cost him billions.
But to him,
yeah.
It's a funny troll. Like, he was gonna buy it, he freaked them all out, and then he's like, I'm out. You know what I mean?
But he's not at the out. He's like,
well, the lawsuit
in the discovery.
Yeah,
I asked you for the appropriate numbers. You didn't give it to me.
Of what? Yeah. Of inactive accounts or bots or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now we go to court.
It could screw him up.
Where you legally have to
disclose your information. Yeah, your like, messed up algorithms that censor people and all that stuff. Yeah, and if that comes to light, that'll be like the troll of the 22nd century. You know what I mean? Yeah. That'll be the biggest troll ever.
Yeah.
It might cost him billions of dollars, but hey.
Yeah, but the conversation about social media is more. I'm constantly in the conversation about managing my attention. So it's nothing to do with the platforms itself. I mean, Facebook and Instagram, but what's pulling my attention away from what I could be doing and want to be doing, like what I'm reading and what practices I'm doing and what I'm committed to. But over the last 6 months, I also joined a men's organization, and that has been transformative. I've never been. It's very strange. Like, the majority of the people around me were most of the time female. I would have some male individuals that I'm interacting with, but not that I'm like speaking with on a constant basis, being accountable to and with. And I took on a bunch of leadership roles, and it's been absolutely incredible.
So is this like a society, or is it like the Illuminati, or like
no,
what do you?
No,
it's a program, like you.
Have you ever heard of Sterling Men's Group?
No.
Men's Weekend?
No.
It's like the Elks Lodge?
What's that?
You don't know what the Elks Lodge is? They're in like every town in America. There's like an Elks Lodge, and
what is that?
You get this membership.
The stereotype is it's like old people hanging out, and
like
they do fundraisers, and they like sit around and share war stories with each other.
No. I mean, I would say it's like in the class of like a transformational leadership development.
Do you pay for it?
Yeah, there's an annual fee.
There's an annual fee.
There are chapters and...
Kind of like Landmark Forum. Have you heard of Landmark?
Yeah, I've attended.
Is it online, this group?
This particular group, our group is online.
And so you're still able to profit from the fraternity, even online?
Yeah.
Without being with people? And
we meet every week. And
on a Zoom session of some sort?
Yeah, on Zoom. And we use Marco Polo for communications during the week, and Slack for... It's a bunch of stuff people are doing. I mean,
I'm part of a men's group too. I recently joined. It's called the Dead Kennedys. Is that right?
Oh, we are a crew.
Like that is true.
That is true. No, it's actually a retreat we do once a year.
I was just JD's been doing this men's retreat for
you guys just went back
for 6 or 7 years, and I joined him for the first time.
And now he's a lifer. Yeah.
I like that.
So they do work.
Well,
there's power in that.
There's a thing of being social. And
I was sure for a solid 3 hours that I was not going to be coming back next year. But I think I'm coming back.
You're coming back.
Well, if you want to unpack the snake story, then go ahead. but there was a snake. There was a rattlesnake, right? We're out in the mountains, like it's really hot, and there's this rattlesnake that came across the road. And I grew up in an area where you see a rattlesnake in your yard, you chop its head off, you bury it, 2 feet under the ground, so it doesn't, no kids or dogs can mess with it, and because it's dangerous, right? It is dangerous. I mean, it's not like the snake's going to come after you, but it's usually happenstance. Somebody comes around a bush or something, and the snake just bites real quick, and that's a hospital visit, anti-venom. You know, it can cause major problems.
But the biting happens before you take its head out.
Yeah, the biting can happen actually after you cut its head off. That's why you bury it.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild, right? Yeah, so it's this. They're just, those animals have evolved to survive. You know what I mean? They're dinosaur type of animals, right? And so this snake comes across. We're having this like spiritual walk up a creek. Basically, we just took off our shoes and go up this beautiful creek, and we're just climbing through, like kind of like chimpanzees would, I would imagine, right? And there's a group of us, and we're just kind of, you know, because it's really hot. We're just
In
trying
the
to
water.
We're in the water.
Yeah.
We don't know how far it's going to go. We're exploring. We're following each other. There's rocks. It's a little precarious, but it's also quite peaceful. The
You have
water's
to depend on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
We're
got
just
kind of a
wandering
leader.
up
We have a
the
leader
stream.
kind of cutting the ways, and we're talking, and we're, oh, look at this. Oh, these animal tracks and this. And so we're done with this like kind of thing. Cool. And it was like one of the highlights of the retreat, really. It was kind of cool, right? And we just didn't expect that to happen. And then there's this snake in the middle of the road, you know, as we're getting back to where we're sleeping. And the consensus of the group was kill the snake, right? We got to get it off the property. We got to talk to the owner of the property.
Did you guys fucking vote on it?
Well, no, you could just tell there was 4 people in the
Yeah.
group, and 3 of them wanted the snake dead, and 1 of them didn't.
Yeah, and the one that didn't want the snake
Was he
dead
vegetarian?
was
Non-vegetarian.
the closest to one.
Yeah.
And
That was you?
It was me.
it was me,
Yeah.
or it was you. Yeah, it was Chris. And so this whole thing happened.
There was a
over
little
this-
bit of a splintering of the group that took place.
Yeah.
Just out of an understanding of some people want the snake dead, and I don't. And, you know, I
It was
made...
us versus them. Kind
It
of.
was, yeah.
I don't think it got that off the rails. It was almost Lord of the. It could have been Piggy and Lord of the Flies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like here's this vegan here saying, "Don't kill the snake," but we're a bunch of mountain guys. Yeah, it could have turned into that, but it flirted with that, but it didn't really. You know. Yeah. Unless you think it did.
No.
So you didn't want it dead because it was a creature? Why
yeah.
kill it?
Well, I've got you know, granted, I am not a person who has spent extensive times in wilderness. I'm a bit of a city slicker. But, you know, I'm 35 years old, and over time, what I've come to learn about myself is more than most people, I am someone who will go out of his way to not kill and to save animals that other people consider to be threats in this environment, which is namely mostly spiders and animals like that. I don't like to crush and kill spiders.
Right.
I look at them and I just see, oh, it's just this predator. I'm not its prey. It's hanging out in the corner of a room. I don't need to kill it.
Do you see like, here's something beautiful and intelligent, or you see like, it's just a creature, it's not against me?
I see something that's beautiful and intelligent. So there's the rational argument, which is I think predators are just bitching anyway. So like when I saw the snake, the first thing I thought is I was stoked. You know, my first thought wasn't cut its head off. It's like, hell yeah, we just saw a shooting star. I want to go up and I want to like experience the snake. You know.
Right.
But then on you know, so that's like when you talk about wanting to have, you know, a wife. There's the rational argument for it, and then there's the more visceral argument, which is that my experience I've had in the past of killing animals has been one that has been painful for me, right, and in a way that I haven't been able to, in my experience, justify very well. I have a recent one where at a house I was at, there was an infestation of bees, and some people there wanted to get the bees out, and there were some more seasoned
poison it.
There were some more seasoned people there that were like, let's chill out. Like the bees, they come and then they go. Like, you know, there was a big swarm of bees. It was very like dramatic. It felt like it was like a plague of sorts, you know, everyone, and it came out of nowhere. So you can't, you know, can't walk around, and you have all the good reasons. There's the one girl who's at the house who's got a bee allergy. If she gets stung, she's going to the hospital, and it's just
all the
like
rationales.
Yeah. And so then you have someone who runs over to the hardware store and grabs a bunch of like flea bombs, and they just start setting them off out, you know. So you start setting them off outside the beehive.
Agitating them.
Yeah. And so it agitates them, and they eventually go away. And then afterwards, there's just thousands of dead bees. And in retrospect, you know, what I've learned about bees and people who care about bees is like, that's not a cool thing to do. Right. Just based on the contribution bees play to the ecosystem. And also the thing that I noticed that actually in retrospect, it wasn't the dead bees that hurt me so much, but it was the people, it's this thing with violence. I could cover a couple different bases, but I've shared about this recently that, so from To Kill a Mockingbird, are either of you guys familiar or no?
Of course.
So
Yeah.
it's To Kill a Mockingbird was a famous book that was written, and there was a movie there was an adaptation that was made, starring Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch. And Atticus Finch he lives in the South. He's a lawyer, and he is like this archetypal, virtuous man. He's a stand-up.
For what's right.
Yeah, what's right. He's moral. He's strong. He's steadfast. And there's one of my favorite scenes from the movie is, so he's got a little daughter, and there's a rabid dog that's in the community, and it's in a distance, and it's frothing at the mouth. And this dog is, if you get rabies, even now, rabies is a really bad thing if you're not,
Right.
vaccinated for it. And so someone
You said the word.
yeah, I did.
You said the word.
Do you need to show them the hand sanitizer?
Sanitizer.
So someone's going to take a shot, and they better be a good shot. And so Atticus Finch, they give Atticus the gun, and he takes his glasses off, he takes a shot, and he kills the dog. And
pain.
Yeah, and his daughter gets to watch all this and realizes her white collar lawyer of a dad is actually the meanest shot in town. The thing is, like a Jordan Peterson thing is, he's the meanest shot, never used it, until he needed to use it.
Yeah.
So you never have to.
But what was so great about Atticus is he did it because he needed to, and he took no unnecessary pleasure in it.
Right.
But what happens is when these opportunities happen,
It wasn't a win. He did it because the damage that would happen.
Exactly.
He did.
Which is the case to be made for the rattlesnake, right? But what you have to be careful for is it always opens up a window for, and what I saw with the bees was I saw some really dark characters come out with the bombs.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Talk about Lord of the Flies,
Oh,
yeah.
dancing around, people like walking away, and
Get-
the
get-
real
get people like that into
real
power.
psychopaths
Get people like that
really
into power.
thrive
Yeah.
in situations like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so even with the snake thing, I saw both, And so even my good friends here, I have to think are they hiding behind, I'm a person from the hills who has to do the right thing to look out for his family? Because really, I just want to be the big, I just want to tickle this instinct for dominance,
For death.
and violence in me. And I saw that for a minute, it was fine. It was like, okay, the snake, I don't want you to kill the snake. If you have to, it's okay. I'm going to leave. But I could have been
But
wrong.
both of those is really cool to watch because that's the whole idea that we have it in us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
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 The desire for
Yeah.
revenge and violence.
Yeah. So, but when I sensed what to me, it could have been a complete misapprehension. But when I sensed this like call for blood and the glee that started, I went like, I want no part in this. I realized that I was outnumbered, and out of my own survival, the limits of my own like protest, had been found.
So did you walk away?
I walked away.
Okay.
And that was it. But then when the hunting party came up to the house where I had exiled myself, they still were intoxicated by the situation,
We were laughing about
Laughing,
it.
and
We didn't kill the snake.
They didn't kill
we
the snake.
could have, but we
didn't.
just no. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I still have that same notion too because
You didn't kill it because it knew it's not going to come down to the camp where you.
No, it was still in the wrong. I mean, it could have bitten somebody. They could bite somebody tomorrow. I don't know,
Right.
But it's just a snake, and there's not a lot of people out there, and there's no dogs around. But yeah, so because I grew up around that, and like when I saw the snake, I had the same reaction. It's funny. I was oblivious to how.
I was
Because
reacting.
yeah,
He was translating.
he was like, oh my, I think because you were the first one to almost calm. I think I don't even know if I said, I'm trying to think back to what happened, but you murmured or you kind of said, don't kill the snake. You just said it kind of subtly between me and two guys, me and Skylar.
Rather than get in front of all of them, being like,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
not
yeah.
happening.
Like you
And this is why.
kind of just
We
mentioned
were
it
trying
to
to
us.
decide on as a group, right? So we're all kind of placing our votes on what to do about the situation.
And he just was very like it was very like a small voice. Don't kill the snake.
So now let's go down this way,
Yeah.
this path for a second. You could not exercise and research and discover where you stand in a social pack, of how you influence other people around you, if you're on your fucking virtual world 24/7. It just, there's nuance that happens in, do I say something? How loud do I say it? Am I going to impact and influence people around me? If there's a majority, can I change their mind? What am I noticing about them in the emotional reactions and, nonverbal clues? And it's
absolutely, yeah. We'd be deprived of all those things if we weren't, the benefit of the retreat, the benefit and the curse is that we really, we were there and got an opportunity to.
And no AI or virtual living is going to have people really develop, which I think so many people are just yearning and missing.
Well, I think it was a good experience though, because we ended up hashing it out, and I think he didn't realize that me and the one guy that have killed a lot of snakes, like rattlesnakes, just like that.
Right.
We didn't really want to kill it either. The guy that was he had a stick on it, and he was we were just kind of hearing it rattle, because it's really cool to hear a rattlesnake rattle. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. He was going to grab it because he's grabbed snakes before,
right.
But you have to grab it a certain way,
right?
Because you don't want to get bit, right? And it's kind of a stupid thing to do, really. But if you're a snake handler, you can do it, right? It's possible. And then it went into the rocks, and we were like, yeah, let's go look. We looked around for a shovel. I was like, if it comes back out, if it gets aggressive, maybe. But then I remember thinking, like, this isn't my property, so whatever. And we gave up the hunt, right? We're just like, yeah. But I can tell you this: if I found a rattlesnake in my backyard, it would be dead, just because I have dogs and cats.
But it's
and
awesome
kids,
that
you know what I mean, like, or I transplant. I transplant it to the neighbor's house, but no, I wouldn't do that because you can't do that. You know what I mean?
Any liberals? And
yeah, a lot. Yeah, we're in Southern California, so But I think it was a good experience though, because we hashed it out, and
well, to be fair, the thing that was actually most difficult about it was not really about the snake. It was about the
banter.
It was the splintering of the group.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then politically trying to sort that out. And we basically had an opportunity to do that, right? Which is we both were able to steel man and each other's arguments and understand that we knew where we were coming from, and to describe, it all happens in an instant, and then for us all to kind of say, here's what that instant looked like from my vantage point and my vantage point and my vantage point.
Yeah.
And then we were able to hopefully see the whole situation a little bit more clearly, benefiting from each other's experience. Through it.
Yeah.
I think about it a lot when you see people in the same room and you're like, okay, people, different bodies, they're humans, they're male, but then it's like, two individuals in the same room having the same conversation could be having completely different experiences.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the actual experience of life that they are experiencing?
Right.
How is it being interpreted? On what suppositions is it sitting on? What are the axioms that they're looking through? What are the perceptions that... It's just like, shit like that fascinates me. That you can have two people looking alike externally. That conversation became so much more apparent in my ayahuasca experience.
I even thought about that. One of my earliest, sorry, I want to hear about that, but
no.
I was just thinking about snakes. I remember as a little kid, do you ever have, there are these kind of insights into life that are almost cliche, but
archetypal.
Yeah, but as I remember the times as a kid that I came to them on my own.
Yeah.
As a kid, I think it was with a snake. I remember thinking how a rattlesnake, even as cool as I thought the snake was, when that rattles, it does something to you, right? It's like a universal sign for danger.
Primal.
Yeah. Mm. But I was thinking, if I was a mongoose, that same rattlesnake would be like,
a dinner bell.
Yeah. Yeah. I would see that thing and I would start, exactly, it would be a dinner bell.
It would, yeah, of course.
You literally
or a honey badger,
You see something completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
So ayahuasca, what
so we're at the last minute, so we're actually 25 seconds over, so let's just quickly jump into a real easy, small, uncontroversial topic like ayahuasca.
I was trying to figure out where you're taking that.
There's actually more stuff I want to ask you too, but I think the ayahuasca thing is
What are the other topics?
Well, the one thing with going back to what we talked about with your family, you have kids. You're
I
a
have
father.
2 kids.
Like, so what are they a product of? Are they like how old are they? Like, what's the story behind that?
My son is 15.
Okay.
He's never met any of my family.
Okay. And you want him to?
I would like him
Yeah.
to meet my family. It's like going to Mars.
Right.
My mother has been very kind in the last year to start asking me about him, sending regards, wanting to see pictures. But my family, most of them don't know that he exists, given that he's not Jewish, which is a topic in itself. My daughter I had from my ex-wife, and she's about to be 18. And
Oh, wow.
for years, the last 18 years, think about her all the time, write to her all the time. My family, myself, we tried for many years to be in communication with her. Her mother has not been supportive of it, to keep it as mild
Yeah.
and non.
So it was a rough divorce, all that stuff.
So then I decided I'll wait until she turns 18, which is coming up.
Right.
And I await and pray for the day where I have a good relationship with both of them.
Okay.
But
because we kind of brushed over, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? We were talking about all this kind of deep stuff with your
Right.
childhood, and we were like,
so when I go,
yeah,
I was driving from New York to Baltimore to go see my son, and it was a painful, sad experience. Being so aware of how I failed him, meaning he doesn't live up, and I don't know if he's going to watch this or not, but when I look at him, and I look at my ideals, and I look at what I want, what I would have wanted to impart to him, what I would want him to be excited about, curious about.
but you consider
inquisitive
that
about.
your failure?
Yeah, and not like, in the sense that over the years, there were times, well, of course, there were times that I could have showed up a lot more frequently and more present and more engaged. And given the environment, given the context, given how my relationship with his mother, obviously all these factors that made it the way it is. And I think that's partially my desire of like, I want to have a whole bunch of kids who are on fucking fire to fix this world, who go out there and are just these beacon of consciousness.
Philosopher kings.
Kings, for Israel, for the world, for the environment, for like, who can demonstrate what it is to have a father who, and speak about a father that they're proud of, and who is dynamic and looks at these different religions and has battled these different, are okay with the extremes that I battled and the taboos that I walked through, and someone who can like hold these different, like basically impart so much of what I've learned. Now look at my kids. My daughter, I don't know. I think she's just dealing with a bunch of trauma for how her mother showed up and the world that she was in and living in Israel. And I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing, but I frequently think, and I don't know the future, what the future holds, but I often think, when are the chickens going to come home to roost? Like, when am I going to physically need to pay the karma of not being there for them? Like,
You don't think you
God
you
forbid,
are?
will he hurt somebody in a way that I can go, if he had a father, he wouldn't have done that. Or the therapy sessions we will sit in. Or, like, I don't know. He's 15. Is he going to turn towards academia and making the world a better place, or being a thug? I don't know. I had a conversation with him for like an hour, 2 hours a few weeks ago. Oh, he cares about it. I want to make a bunch of money. I'm like, great. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. Just want to make a bunch of money.
But he's 15.
He's 15.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm getting advice from other men.
You grew up
I
in a
grew up
different.
so fast, and I grew up in the roller coaster and the
Yeah.
traumatic world.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. So I kind of go, what I would want, what I pray for, and I put my mind toward, in my efforts towards being the kind of person that I can be a king to a queen, and have an incredible woman that wants to build a family, and also will hold a space for them to be teenagers in early 20s and have a place in this home where they can see how I'm raising my kids, and then hopefully learn something from it and do some healing. Like, maybe the story is the most beautiful story. they learn, we become close, they take responsibility for their pain, and they choose to be in a relationship, perhaps, or it's a devastating story. I have no idea, or maybe
Both,
a version
neither.
of those two. But I'm very aware of. I would want to have kids that I could hold to a higher standard.
Well, you got a date this weekend, so maybe we can end it on that.
We don't want to do ayahuasca.
I don't know, man. I think that's a whole.
Maybe the next time.
Yeah, maybe the next time
Okay.
we can.
I'm about to do another one this weekend.
All right, good. We'll come
You're
back.
doing a podcast.
No,
Ayahuasca.
Oh, really?
come back and
Another
report
journey.
to us since we're too meek and mild to venture down that,
It's
Wow.
or maybe to
without,
Well,
without
I know guys that do it that are like shamans that actually
Yeah.
like, perform the whole thing. Yeah. Well, my old boss was like he's like one of the most just one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. So I know a lot about that. You know, because I've worked with a guy. I've never done. I mean, I did a lot of LSD and stuff. you
Yeah,
know,
same.
prior.
Well,
But,
one of my takeaways from it was the real landscape is within and not without. And it's a fucking cheesy statement, but to have that realization after you technically and literally cannot use your eyes to see anything for some period of time, and then to realize when I close my eyes and I actually look at the vastness of an internal landscape, most of the time what I first encounter is terror. Heavy fear. What if I never can see? What if I can never be entertained? What if I never get to see more beauty? What if everything that I'm going to live with the rest of my life is going to be a repeat on loop of the experience that I already had versus new experiences? But then I had this thing of like how quick, it takes seconds to switch between an external landscape where things catches my attention, I'm entertained, I'm distracted by, amused by, in worship of, versus close my eyes. And I had this realization that, yes, I close my eyes and I encounter these monsters, but right next to the monsters, the monsters are little angels, like hope, inspiration, surrender, beauty, passion. And that doesn't live in a past, present, and future. They are just an internal resource. So I kept fluctuating, and that brought me more than comfort. It was this like, maybe the entire point of life, because I don't really know that you're there. I just have to assume what I'm feeling and what I know of you, and you kind of look like a person that I've hugged before. Like I'm just right this very second, I'm like, yeah, maybe you're there, maybe you're not, but I only relate with you to the extent that I'm getting a sense of warmth or a sense of being in this loop of connection or understanding, or it's reaffirming something, but the experience is actually internal. So it's this really bizarre experience to kind of play around with perception of an external and internal vista and landscape. And then I'll share one other little thought, and then we can end it there without going into what the experience actually was. But I had this I giggled at some point in the middle of the ceremony, and there was a part of me that kind of assumed I'll do ayahuasca once and the entire curtain will be lifted, and I'll finally be like, fuck, now I get it. You're there, I'm here, you're fucking playing with me in this particular way, you're manipulating everything, and okay, I give up, I now see the whole picture. There was this instinct that I hope that happens, like the burning bush, like I just want to come out, I'm cured, I get it. And the image that popped into my head was, what happens if you're in that room and I'm in this room, and you run in there to look for, I run in there to look for you, simultaneously you're running in here to look for me. You won't find me. I won't find you in there because we're not there anymore. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, that's what I've been doing with God. I run looking for God. God runs looking for me, and we miss each other. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, this fucking experience during ayahuasca isn't meant to be a godly experience. It's the most human experience possible. It's like it's the experience of me coming in contact with things that are blocking me from me, of me being the best version of myself. And it was almost like God is saying, stop fucking looking for me. Look for yourself. And in doing so, you will find me. And I just started giggling. It was just like, maybe the process isn't trying to figure out what galaxies are doing what, and in understanding that all of a sudden I'll have divine inspiration. Maybe the point was to discover my humanity. Like, why am I making myself small, and why am I holding myself back, and where am I judgmental, where am I adding to the pain in the world, and on and on. So there's a bunch of realizations and experiences of like hours of being elsewhere that we can talk for a very long time, but I loved coming out of that experience with that analogy of going, maybe the point isn't to get to the top of, like, that's the whole, what Jordan Peterson talks about, Tower of Babylon. Like, maybe the point isn't to be efficient and competent enough to build the biggest tower and actually go up there and be like, God, show your fucking self and the way I want to be experienced. Like, I want to meet you in the way I want to meet you. Like, perhaps the experience is like, no, I get to go into layers of self, discard. I mean, that's the recovery.
Yeah, uncover,
process.
discover, discard. Yeah.
So I think
To
it's
thy own self be true.
St. Francis
Yeah.
paraphrase, I think, is something like, who's looking is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
There was another Ramana Maharshi thing there. Yeah.
I mean, we could keep going with
know,
this,
yeah.
but yeah.
Woman comes to
Starting to
him.
get juicy.
Woman comes to him and, saying, Ramana, where am I to find this God? I've been looking all my life for this God. And he says to her, you treat God like it's an object, but God is the eternal subject.
Yeah. So that's when it comes to the conversation of religion and God, I usually sum it up with, I'm so fucking bothered by these ginormous problems that it's the problem of God that keeps me just awake all the time. In the sense of the problem of how do we exist? Like,
Yeah, you're right.
like,
Yeah.
how does this happen? How do I participate in this thing? It's the problem is so ginormously big that I don't know how many lifetimes one can spend refining, fine-tuning daily meditations of like watching my perceptions, watching my experiences, figuring out why do I have the habits the way I do, and refining them and seeing how I fall short. And then
So is the point to set the whole thing down altogether because it's too big of a task, or to revel in the fact that you can do it until the end of your life and you're never going to run out of material?
I don't do either. I think I'm constantly smacked into the humility because I'll have a good fucking
Yeah, I
day.
was just gonna say,
and all of a sudden I have
humility,
a knot in my neck, and there's nothing I can fucking do about that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, go stretch a bit more, and then I have tinnitus.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no off button to that. And then I have heart palpitations. There's no off button to that. So it's like this human experience. It's like, okay, suffering comes with it, but I'm constantly reminded to be humble that this thing, my first sponsor in recovery, he, out of nowhere, I would talk about my son not having a relationship with him and wanting one. I would talk about all these amends that I still have to make, and he would just go like, this thing is so much bigger than you. And I'm like, what? This recovery thing is so much bigger than you.
Right.
This problem is so much bigger than you. This like addiction is so much bigger than you. It's like, for you to assume that you're going to pontificate long enough to get being like, I now get this. I'm cured.
Well, to
So much bigger than you.
To
And it
clear-
means so many different things.
Yeah.
to maybe close the loop and to touch on a couple different things. You talked about technology and the way it, deprives us from human experience. And I was talking about the retreat and the rattlesnake experience. And when I went and I finally exiled myself from the drama because I was outnumbered, the thing that I took refuge in was I put on the television and I watched, I fired up the internet and I put on a movie and I watched the movie Taxi Driver. And I was so fuming still that I wasn't able to really absorb that much of the show. But one thing I like about, I like when I'm distracted because I'm highly emotional. But then the things that I do notice are interesting to me because they have the wherewithal to kind of like cut through, you know? And the one line I remember from the movie was, I don't remember who said it, but he said, we're all fucked, more or less. And I thought, that's true. And
That's all true. Blessed,
you like that one.
We're all fucked, more or less. Yeah, I thought it was good. So,
but God lives in the center of that.
Yeah.
Our beauty lives in the center of that.
Yeah. But I'm glad you're in town for a little while, so maybe we'll have an opportunity to chat more. And
yeah, we could get into it. I'm curious about the ayahuasca. I think we should do one, and we just focus on your ayahuasca. One? Yeah, I want to do one. We should do a... Are you
putting that on the record?
I'm putting it on the record. We should do a show about the ayahuasca experience.
That's what he meant.
Yeah.
A show. Okay.
Not like, take ayahuasca and record it.
Oh, no. No.
It was a beautiful experience, and it still terrifies me. And
I've been very bi-curious about it, and yeah, definitely.
Literally.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks for coming out. Yeah.
My pleasure.